Hello, everyone. Date night with Mr. and Mrs. B. And
Hi.
you know, we apologize we hadn't gotten into this conversation before, long before in some of our early episodes. But
On the Chiching? The
yeah,
Chiching conversation?
it was kind of overdue, kind of overdue. So tonight, healthy finance conversations, and I know the healthy and the finance and the conversation, none of those words in your mind really seems to go together right now. So we first of all going to address one of clearly sometimes one of the main causes of major arguments between within marriages and relationships is sometimes over finances. Sometimes we have it with our kids as well, and you know at the end of the day, sometimes even divorce happens because of finance. People can't see eye to eye. So there's no one magic pill that you take that's going to make this better, but it's ways and conversations that you have to condition yourself so that you don't get into these real ugly conversations. And we literally got to a point where with Mrs. B and myself, it would stress her out anytime she had to have financial conversations with me. And it does creates a level of stress. I mean, even people who are single, when it comes around times for bill paying at the end of the month, and they're watching that money going down,
Mm-hmm.
it creates major stress within their within their world about that situation. Um, I'm involved with an organization, and many we've mentioned it many times before. One Life Fully Lived, and what we do at One Life Fully Lived is we give people a roadmap to live their most fulfilling life by teaching them that when they're passionate about something, and we can put it in layman's terms, basically, if you really love what you do, it's not considered work. You get up and you go to work every day. If it feels like work, you don't really love it. But if you're passionate about it, it's never work. Like, you can put in hours doing something that you love and not even realize the time that has passed you by. So when you have a passion for something, there's an opportunity to make money, and you know, and you're really good at it. That's considered the fulfillment triangle. And then we pair that with what we call the core four, and this is where it comes into tonight's episode. First, first pillar of the core four is your vision. Is having a vision for what your future looks like. Your second pillar of the core four is your finances, and where we'll stop there on the financing is we we give people and teach people and show people the ABCs of the finances. You know, how to have a strong offense versus the defense, right? How much money you have going out versus how much money you got coming in. So it's really having an understanding within a couple, is having that understanding. Now, of course, if if the wifey, wants to go out shopping and she wants to put everything on a credit card, knowing that she can't afford it, yeah, sometimes that causes problems. At the time, there's that momentary gratification of buying the stuff that you want to buy, but then you're faced with the bill at the end of the month
The bill with interest too.
with interest
Yeah,
if you
and if
don't
you
pay it
don't
off
pay
in
that
full.
off, you're
Yep,
gonna be paying the bank some more interest, and the bill's just gonna keep going up.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's how would these conversations go? How would a healthy conversation go? And there's several ways, because each person is unique. So there's no one way to talk to a person, but we all, even though we all have different ways that we deal with things, it always going to come around that we still have to deal with finances. We can't escape it, right? So,
And not only that, but sometimes we come into relationships where we already have financial
mm,
issues. And I only say this because I remember a very good friend of mine who got married to a girl, and after he got married to her, he realized that she had $90,000 in debt,
I,
and school loans, credit cards up to the brim. So even before you say the I do's, the conversation about finances is very, very, very important.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to be together, right, it makes sense that you will be sharing all the bills together. So that means all your income will be together. Now,
Yeah.
granted, some of us have separate bank accounts, okay, because, you know, there's, I don't know, that, well, you can kind of talk a little bit about that. Or maybe you came from a previous relationship where one person just couldn't manage the money the right way. So when you became single, you decided, I'm never going to put my money with anybody ever again. So which, if your partner is okay with you having your bank account and I'm having my bank account, that's perfect. As long as you guys come together, everybody knows all the bills of what it is every month, what you bring in, and hopefully you have a budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I know for some people, but the word budget is like a 4-letter curse word.
and
you know what I'm
there's
saying?
and there are books and people who don't believe in budgets. But honestly, if you're a spender or you're someone that kind of can't have control of certain things, you need to make sure you got a budget that every time you get paid, that you know how much money has to sit in one bank account for all of your necessities of all your bills and everything like that. You know, because talking about you want to go on a shopping spree means you got the cash to be able to do that.
You know, in our household, even just before we got married and even after we got married, we had this thing that when money was tight, and you had to ask this question: is it a want or is it a need?
That was more your thing. Me, I was just like, if I want to go spend, I'm gonna go spend money. Okay.
Right.
I was pretty irresponsible with my money.
So you see where the conflict sometimes can happen, right?
Yeah.
But these are conversations that need to happen, and honestly, we didn't have that conversation before,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
And we had to go through some pain and some power struggles and things like that to get to a point where talking about financing is not a difficult feat for us right now. So, but we can spare some of you guys the pain. We actually had an episode where we talked about qualifying and re-qualifying your partner. And that's one of those things that even if you've been married for a while, it's okay to revisit this conversation and have it be a healthy conversation. Have some ground rules. Make sure your offense. Make sure you have more money coming in than you have going out. I mean, you think about it. If you have, if you're spending more than you're making, chances are the extra expenses is going on credit cards. And if the extra expenses is going on credit cards, then you're going to be in debt. And the credit card company will love that. They'll keep sending you more or increasing your credit limit. And Mrs. B, who happens to be in the mortgage business, right? Latina lender. La Latina lender.
A website.
That's a website, but that's also one of her handles on Instagram. She deals with it, you know, almost daily, where some people, they want to buy their dream home, but their credit score is really jacked up, or their debt to income ratio is really high, which means the threshold of to be able to afford. Can you explain debt to income ratio real quick? I know we're not talking about mortgages, but that's an important thing.
Well, when you're looking to purchase a house, you need to think about you're going to have a mortgage, right? So they're looking at the amount of the mortgage that you're going to have on top of the debts. So they add those two together, and then they look at your income to basically see if you're able to afford that payment based off of your debt and that actual amount of the mortgage. So if you're not able to do that, if your debt to income is, you know, surpassed of a certain percentage, because every program has a certain percentage that you need to be at, if you max that out, then you wouldn't be able to qualify, let's say, for a certain amount of money, of like, let's say a $250,000 house. At that point, maybe you'll need to go down to $200,000, you know? So it really depends. Now, when you're looking at all of those aspects, and we're talking about the finance piece, like I said, it's a really important conversation to have even before you get into a very serious relationship. Um, it's kind of like we had discussed previously about interviewing your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Your The financial aspect should be a part of that interview.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we say interview, we're not talking about like, you have to, I'm
You got to
you
qualify your
you
partner. I mean,
qualify them based off of what you want out of the person,
mm-hmm.
you know. And if they don't meet up, I mean, can you imagine you're doing really well for yourself, okay, and then you meet someone who is like in really a lot of debt, like my friend, right? So this guy, he had money saved up, he always paid his bills, he had all this stuff, but he once he got into a relationship and got married, he had no idea of the financial piece of her end, you know. And it was kind of devastating because at that point it was almost like he felt some sort of responsibility to be able to try to help her
Mm-hmm.
get out of
Mm-hmm.
that debt,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't able to buy a house. They were living with family.
Yeah. Whose credit score do they look at between the two?
They're going to look at the lowest.
Right. So if you might have worked on your credit and you have a really high credit score, and you meet someone that don't have their stuff together, guess what? You try to buy a house. Now, why do we buy a house? Most of the times it's our dream house, right? It's the house of our dreams, right? So you potentially could not get the house of your dreams because of your partner not having a high enough credit score.
Yeah, that's very true.
And what eventually, unbeknownst to you, there'll be a level of resentment that will be building up because this person is preventing certain things from happening. So yes, finances can be a big deal, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, if you have a bad credit score, if you have bad spending habits, that can be changed. You can pay off debt. You know.
So here's the thing. I don't want us to go off course,
Yeah.
but I really, really, really believe, and I can only say this because Mr. B and I are together for 15 years, for 50 years, and the financial piece of our relationship was not very, very strong in the very beginning. It's strong now, only because we had to have that hard conversation.
Yes.
And the example here is that Mr. B is so much more better, was so much more better to try to have a conversation with me about money, whereas I used to stress about the finances all the time, right?
Yeah.
But once we were able to get past that, and it wasn't a screaming match or
No.
wasn't anything, like literally Mr. B grabbed pen and paper and literally you have to do this.
Yeah.
Pen and paper to look at everything, see where we're at, what's coming in, what we have left over, what are we doing with this money, what are we trying to pay down, what are our future goals, are we looking to do an addition to the house, are we looking to go on a trip. All of those things are very important because if you want to go, like let's say on a vacation, right? How are you going to go on a vacation? You're going to put that on a credit card and you're going to be paying on it for 10 years.
And keep in mind, vacation, we talked about that in an episode, is filling up your love cup.
Right.
So you need to have that time together to keep filling up the love cup.
Right. So my point to that is you have to, it is your decision. I'm not telling you what to have that conversation. And one of you will need to bring it up, especially
Initiate, yeah.
one of you will need to bring it up because if you don't, it can cause big damage into your own relationship. And a lot of the times, this is true, that it ends up being in divorce.
Yep. Yep.
And like I mentioned before, if you both cannot be on the same account, then you both have separate accounts, but you both are on the same page of what's due every month. And one person becomes a responsible person of making sure all the bills are being paid, while the other one contributes to the entire household expenses. So that is just my piece of what we've kind of been through.
Yes.
And it is a very important conversation. It's something important in your relationship because, like I said, it will cause turmoil within yourself and even within your relationship.
Well, I'm glad you had that little piece, Mrs. B, because it showed how much you've grown over the years. Because, I mean, think about it. For someone that admits that she wasn't quite responsible with the finances before, to be able to hold this piece and have that part of the conversation says a lot. So that's all that needs to be said right there. That's a mic drop moment. I'm not dropping any mics because these mics are expensive. So have a great weekend. After you've had the conversation, Mrs. B is going to tell you what?
Love up on each other.
Right. So that way.
Love up on each other financially, too.
There you go. Have a good night,
Good night, everybody.